The Star of Wonder said, if you ask an astrophysicist, they will tell you that a star is just a ball of combusting gases. But I like to think of us as stars, as pinpricks in the firmament, as thin places where God and humanity are closest. And the star goes on to say, where God's love and God's light shine through. Do we feel that too, the star asks? Is that the source of the thrill of hope that is Christmas Eve for us? When was the last time you and I had that thrill of hope? The Star of Wonder is a wonderful metaphor during these dark days of December. And I don't know about you, but I could use a little light this season. Many of us are affected by the darkness in these early days of winter. Our mood can drop as the days become shorter. Psychologists have a phrase for this, SAD, seasonal affect disorder. And if you ask my family, they can tell you that they notice a dip in my mood when the days become shorter and darker. How about you? We look at the news on television or read it online, and we are overwhelmed at times by the challenges that we face and worry over the future for our children. There is a lot of darkness in the world, and we long for this light that the star speaks of. And so it was on this past Sunday that I knew that I needed a little bit of light. And I heard about a church in New Hampshire called the Church of the Woods. So I put on my MapQuest and I put in Canterbury, New Hampshire. And about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I set forth for the Church of the Woods. I drove up that long road, which at one time had been a logging road. It was covered with snow, and I came to a little barn with smoke curling out of the chimney. And adjacent to the barn in a meadow was the pastor of this little church, and his name is Steve Blackmer. And Steve was tending to a campfire. And so as this little church gathered the congregants aged 3 to 70 plus, Steve opened us with a prayer. And he said, this is a church without walls. It's a church where our sanctuary is nature. And he said, I'd like to teach you a few words. He said the first word is a fancy theological word called panentheism. He said that's different than a pantheist. A druid is a pantheist who says that that tree is God, that the river is God. But a panentheist is one who sees God in the tree, God in the river, God in all of creation. And he said, what I'm going to do is release you in a few moments and invite you to just walk the snowy paths of the forest. And I want you to listen for holy words from God. Because he said, in nature, we will sense creation in a powerful way and hear the voice of the Creator speaking to you. He said, if anyone wants snowshoes, you can take snowshoes. I thought, what a cool church. And he said to the dad with 2 little boys, if your boys want to go sliding, they can just go down that hill. But he said, what I want you to do is just to listen and to be present for how God is speaking to you. And I think we know this instinctively to be true, right? We go to the beach, we go up into the mountains, because we sense that God is speaking to us in a very powerful way. And then he said, I want you to be mindful of the thin places. And he said in Celtic spirituality, there is a concept that between our conscious world and the world of our heart is that thin place where we sense God's presence in a very special way. You see that whale breaching off the coast of Gloucester. You're skiing or you're hiking at Mount Hood and you see a rainbow break through. And you say, wow. Those are the thin places when we recognize that there's more going on than meets the eye. And so Pastor Steve released us, our little group of about 15 or 20, and he said, go out, look, and listen. And then he said, in about 30 minutes, I will ring a bell and invite you to come back to the barn and warm up. And so we walked, and so we listened, and so we looked, and we were filled with wonder. And after 30 minutes, we heard this sound. And we brought our items into this warm barn because we were chilled after 30 minutes out in the woods, out in the snow. And we laid our items on the altar. Pine cones, pine boughs, and the best gift of all, the 3-year-old and the 6-year-old and their dad brought in moose antlers that they'd found out in the woods. And Steve reminded us what we already knew, that all of these were gifts to us from God. And all we needed to do was say thank you. And all we needed to do was make room in our hearts, minds, and imaginations for wonder and awe. That's what Christmas invites us to, a sense of wonder, mystery, and awe. To move beyond the familiarity of the Christmas story that many of us have heard so many times, and to open ourselves to the sense of wonder and awe and mystery that those wise ones must have experienced, that the shepherds felt, that Mary and Joseph must have experienced when they looked upon that baby Jesus for the first time. In Celtic spirituality, they say that God is in the tree, God is in the river, and God is in you and me. And the story of Christmas is that God chose to enter into the world in the most humblest of fashions in the life of the baby Jesus. And all we are invited to say is glory, glory, glory. The sun had set, the worship service in that barn was over, and I walked out into the field, across the field to get back into my car and to drive back into Beverly. And the stars were beginning to break forth from the sky. And I had a sense of peace, of comfort, and of hope that I didn't have when I set out. A reminder that the darkness of our lives, of our times, never has the last word. That light, that hope, that the promise of Christmas always breaks forth. No matter how challenging your life may be, or mine, or our times, the light always comes. In the Gospel of John, we hear, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was with God in the beginning, and through him all things were made, and without him nothing was made that has been made. In the beginning was the Word. The word in the Greek language, which is the language of the New Testament, is logos, which means the reason and order of the world, that brought the cosmos into being, that cast the stars into the sky, that created the oceans and created you and me. That this logos came to earth and lived in the form of a life of a story we call Jesus. And if we want to catch a glimpse of the wisdom of the Creator, we need look no further than the life, the teachings, and the witness of Jesus, who teaches us how to live, how to love, how to savor life, how to taste life, how to forgive one another, and how to be free, women and men, girls and boys, free to love, free to live, free to dream. In Canterbury, New Hampshire, in 18 inches of snow, looking up in the sky last Sunday night, I sense God's presence. I sense God's hope. I sense God's peace in a very powerful way. That is the gift offered to you and to me, with those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And may God's people say, amen.